All right, well, why don't we go ahead and get started? Welcome everybody to our February Austin DFW San Antonio TUG. My name is Chris Monahan. I'll be your MC today. Great to see all these familiar faces. We have a great event planned for you today. Let me go ahead and get started. As always, before we start our event, we like to welcome or thank our advisory board members. These are all the folks that work behind the scenes that help put this event together every single month. So they work with lining up our speakers, planning the events, the content, and just really do a great job for organizing the event. So I wanted to give a big round of applause to all these guys and thank them a lot for all the hard work they do. So let's start with today's agenda. I'm going to do some general housekeeping announcements, and then we have our featured speaker today. It's Prakhar Bajpai from the city of Austin, and he's going to give a presentation on the life cycle of a data analytics project. He's going to give us an overview of a case study that they did at the Innovation Center, and they just walk us through the life cycle management and share some best practices. So it's a really great presentation. I can't wait to see it. And then afterwards, we're going to do a networking breakout session, and Kobe's going to be hosting our breakout room, Ask Anyone Anything, and I will be hosting our another room for strategy and adoption. All right. So just a little bit about our meeting format first. As always, this is a actual Zoom meeting. It's a live meeting, so please turn on your cameras. Share your faces. Please though observe general Zoom etiquette and mute when you're not speaking. We do want to have a lot of audience participation. So in the chat window, please leave your comments. I will put also a survey there. Please give us your feedback. We love to make these events better. So let us know sort of what you think about our presentations and about the format of our TUG event. When we do our presentations, we'll be holding a Q&A session after the presentation. My co-host today is going to be Kobe Sparks. Look for his name in the chat window and send him a message directly if you have any questions, and he'll field the questions for the Q&A at the end of the presentation. In some additional housekeeping announcements, we have our March TUG coming up. It's going to be March 10th, and our featured speaker then will be Lorna Brown. She's the data coach at the Data School in the UK, and she's written a book called Tableau Desktop Cookbook. And so she's going to share with us some of her favorite recipes, tips, and tricks in Tableau Desktop. So if you do a lot of Tableau desktop work, please make this event. You're going to learn a lot about best practices around Tableau. In addition, we'll have an April TUG event on April 14th. The big announcement though today, besides the TUG, is that TC is coming up. So get ready. May 17th through 20th is going to be the TC conference. It's going to be our first hybrid conference. There's going to be some details not yet released, coming soon. Hold tight, but it will be some in-person event as well. So if you'd like to attend, we'll send that information out once we get it. Part of having our community here is just talking to different members and finding out what they do, what else they do in the data community. And one of our advisory board members, Amy Wu, has come up with a new community that she'd like to share with everybody. So I thought I'd give her just a few minutes to tell us about it. Amy, do you want to share some comments?
Hi, I'm Amy Wu, and with Nicole Klassen, we have decided to make a new community group because we just enjoy being part of this Tableau community. And so our group is about educational data. We're starting off with a really cool data set from the City of Austin Open Data about school-based grants. So it has location data, it has money, it has school locations, a lot of different things that we'd love for you to submit your visits if you want to build up that Tableau public portfolio. And you could be in our first month of favorites if you submit it to the viz form. So if you just let us know that you're making it and submit it to the viz form, you could be in our first month of favorites. So thank you very much, Chris, for letting me tell you what is your visitors.
All right, thanks, Amy. Yeah, so if you're interested, please join. We have the link here. We'll send it also out in our invite. It's called eduvisors.com. So please check it out. All right, now on to our featured presentation. As I mentioned, Prakhar is going to be speaking to us. today about a project that they've done at the city of Austin. He's going to share best practices as well. Prakhar has a background in data science with over 5 years of experience in data analytics. And he's a lover of math, and sorry for all you Longhorn fans out there, he's also a very, very proud Aggie. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Prakhar. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Chris. Hello, everyone. My name is Prakhar. Let me start by sharing my screen first. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, just once again. So hello, everyone. My name is Prakhar Bajpai, and I am a data scientist at Office of Innovation. We are a small group within the city of Austin. We are basically based inside the city manager's office. So before we jump on to the topic of today, I just wanted to talk a little bit about what is innovation. I think the innovation is something that can be very different to different people of how they exactly understand the meaning of this term. I'm going to share the meaning that we at City of Austin Office of Innovation consider the meaning of innovation office. We define it as innovation happens when any problem that is new to you and that has an uncertain outcome. Because about especially about the uncertain outcome, I think this is something that we focus on a lot, because most of the time we deal with very novel based like situations where we don't know a lot about the exact problem we have to identify and then work accordingly to those things. Second, where might innovation accelerate progress or create new pathways towards achieving our goal? So if you just see from the perspective of City of Austin, we have our strategic direction that is provided by our city manager and city council. We have to make sure that we are aligning to that and then identify, prioritize, and define our projects based on those conditions. And then we have this particular process of starting with the project design, defining, prototyping, build, deploy, and then learn and iterate. And then we have this iteration process where we go back again to our principal stages and then see how we have dealt it on. So that I just wanted to share this with you again, because in the later slide, I'm going to talk about how do we do this, especially from the data science perspective, because I am the data scientist in the group. So I work a lot on specific data science and analytics related problems with the innovation office. So, but that this is like more of our general overview and the process of working within the group. If you just see, this is just a very basic cycle, and we always consider it as a cyclic process rather than a linear one, because we always feel that if we start from understanding the challenge, develop solution, and then implement solution, we always have to make sure that we are coming back to understanding the challenge after implementing, so that we see how we have performed and if we have any feedbacks or things like that. So if you see, we have this in a circular process rather than just a linear one. Again, our focus is understanding the challenge, because as I told you, our definition of innovation is very different, that we consider innovation where we have an uncertain outcome. So through this cyclic process, we have to understand that even after implementing the solution, there may be some cases where we have to understand the challenge once again to make sure that we are going in the right direction. How we focus on the front end of the challenges, these are like our just top few points that we always make sure. We always try to minimize risk. We always try to spot unintended effects early, figure out what works, and then make sure we solve real problems, not just by shiny tech, especially as a part of city where our goal is to help the community, to help the citizens of City of Austin. It is always important that we solve real problems that affect real actual citizens of city of Austin. And this has been the best part of my role here from the last 1.5 year, almost 2 years, that I have got to work on really like the actual real life problems that we talked about when I was in college. So, and I'm going to demonstrate one or two different dashboards that we created as a part of a project later as well. So for that even, so now after the basic introduction of how our group works within the city, let's start with what do we do as a part of life cycle of any data analysis project that comes our way. So basically what I know that this can be a very, especially for us, if you are in the data analytics field, you can understand that these are very basic things. But what I saw throughout my career, that sometimes in, maybe because of time or maybe because of the complexity, we tend to either ignore or miss some of these factors while creating any new projects. But I think that it is, each of these steps are very crucial in creating a whole analysis project altogether. And even if you see here, I have put it as a circular project because you can always come back to any particular step even after you have completed the next process as well. So how I define it is, I just broke it down into these 6 different stages, or like phases, you can say. Define the problem, determine data availability, prepare the data, implement the solution, communicate the results, and maintain the model. So if you just see, like, especially even after you have worked for like 5-10 years in this data analytics or business analytics domain, we always tend to feel that design and validate is the only, maybe design and validate and communicating the results are the only two options we have. But we always have to make sure that we are also understanding these different 6 stages as well. So let's just start. Like, this is very brief. I just want to keep it very brief so that we can spend more time on understanding and demonstrating the projects. But let's just define what this stage, define the problem, actually means. It means defining the scope and business requirements, gather required information, determine appropriate analysis method, and identify deliverables. I think as a data scientist or a data analyst in your organization, it is always very important to define the problem as soon as possible. Sometimes it may not be possible that you can define the entire problem during like the first day of getting the new project, but it is always great to have as much problem as you can understand in the initial stages itself. Next, determine data availability. I think this is something that is very crucial, especially for us as a small group within the city of Austin, because we get a lot of projects and requests where we get, like, we have to provide deliverables where we need some specific kind of data that may or may not be available. That is why it is very important to understand and determine what data is available. So identify data requirements, define reliability, frequency, and integrity of data, especially in the public service, like in the city, local government. It is always very important to have that reliability and integrity of any data that you are using, so that whenever you are presenting your results, you always have this trust, and like even the community can have trust in the output and the results that you are providing. Look for the errors in the data and then explore data and characteristics. So this is the part of determining the data availability. Prepare the data. I think, yeah, and this is again one more a very important point that we have to do, especially as data scientists and data analysts in our group, preparing the data. I always say that we spend at least 70% of the time just to make sure that we are preparing our data correctly. We have, because creating and implementing the solution is easier than actually preparing the data to be able to do that thing. So I think preparing the data is a very crucial step. So gather data from multiple sources, uh, perform cleaning operations, format, blend the data, and then use basic sampling techniques if you need. So I think all of these things are very important to like make sure that whenever you are creating the actual model or visual dashboard, anything that you are creating, you always have to make sure that the data is prepared. Yeah, your data is in that ready condition to be able to do that thing. Next is design and validate the model. I think this is something we all know that this is a part of the cycle that is most important, you can say. But I would say this is something that we always do, but we also have to make sure that we are covering all the bases. So develop methodology and determine important variables, build and assess the model, evaluate the results, and then validate results again and try to improve the accuracy. So I think this is one of the key things that we also have to make sure in this phase, that we are, after creating or implementing our model, we are validating our results and getting the feedback from all the relevant stakeholders on the project, so that we can go back in the loop again and improve the accuracy and make sure that our data is as accurate as possible. Because especially when we deal with a lot of civic related problems in the city, we have to make sure that we are hearing the voices of the community groups and even the city staff or city manager's office. We have to make sure that we are getting their feedback and trying to improve our accuracy or like presentation. If we are doing a dashboard, we have to make sure that we are presenting as much information as easily as possible, because we always have to make sure the bandwidth of the users that will be looking at our data. So this is something I think is very important in this phase as well. And then communicating the results, again, this is perhaps the most important part, because I can create as great as a dashboard, but if I cannot communicate that result to the audience that is supposed to look at it, there's no like point of creating a huge complex dashboard with like 50 different moving variables or graphs. So determine best method to present insights based on analysis and audience, because sometimes we just think about analysis and we tend to like forget about the audience as well. Because even with the, like, you can have audience where you have all the senior analysts or like directors of the company which are very well versed with the data that you are working on. But on the other hand, in some cases you can have users or like your audience who does not know a lot about the data, or they are not very well versed with like complex charts that you usually create. So you have to make sure that you are determining your methods of insights presenting based on both of those factors. Craft a compelling story, make recommendation, and research on improved or optimized model. So I think making recommendation is something that is very important, especially for us in the City of Austin Office of Innovation, because as I told you earlier that we work on very novel problems. So we like usually we do not have a specific path to work on initially. We try to help and create that path within the city of whatever department we are working on. So we try to create, and this is usually one of our deliverables, that we try to make some recommendations to the group based on what exactly we are looking for in that process or whatever the project is at the end. And then this is the last phase, like I call it the last stage, but I think this is something that is very crucial as well, because sometimes when we start creating a model, uh, it is very understanding that we are just creating a model. So we want to create as good looking as and like as insightful dashboard or visual or even a data science project as we can. But one thing we usually forget is we have to maintain the model. So that it can be used for a longer term rather than just for like a one-time purpose. So we have to lay out the model update process. We have to ensure that there is an accurate and transparent data refresh, periodic review of the solution, and then gather feedback from audience and implement it in the original model to improve it. So you have to frequently get feedback from the audience, try to implement it in your original model to improve it. You have to ensure that the data refresh process is clearly laid out. You have to lay out a update process as as detailed as possible, so that once you are even if you are away or someone else takes over your project, because usually that's our process, that we just create an initial product and then we hand it over to another department within the city. So we have to make sure that we have this model update data refresh process laid out in the early part as well, so that when we hand it over to the department, they can keep on using the same model and solution that we created over a long period of time. So this is one of the dashboards that one of the projects that we did with Austin Police Department. We had the data from them for their 911 calls for services. We had the data for 2.5 years approximately. So this is one of the case studies that we did. So I just laid out the entire process that we did in those 6 phases that we talked about. So defining the problem, we had we have to understand first that how that calls for service data actually worked. And then we had to set up dashboard to assist the Austin community, answer their lines of inquiry as we co-creatively reimagine public safety. The next part, as I showed earlier, was determining the data availability. So we got the data for the computer aided dispatch system. We also got the data definition sheet and process flow of the calls, starting from pre-scene arrival to post-incident. For data preparation, we got we received all the separate data files for each year. So I had to combine all the data files together, remove any person identifiable information out of it, and anonymize the incident ID for each incident, because our end goal was putting up dashboards on a public platform, for which we chose Tableau Public. So we had to make sure that we are removing all the person identifiable information and then anonymizing anything which can directly point to a specific person or a location. About design and validate, I created some derived variables to solve specific lines of queries and ended up setting 9 Tableau dashboards. Also validated the results by matching the results that back with the APD data team, and then maintain data transparency. Communicate, our group did live demonstrations of dashboard to the public safety committee of the city of Austin. We also received feedback from members and addressed queries from different stakeholders, ranging from city staff, city manager, even our mayor and other council members as well. And then maintaining, I created SOPs for the entire data refresh process in the dashboard. Also developed Python script to gather the data, perform mining, and then supply updated data to the dashboard. So, and I'm going to demonstrate the dashboard just in a few minutes to show you some of the dashboards that we actually created. But this is like the process that we use in this particular project. And then now actually, right now I am working on updating all of those 9 dashboards with the latest data that we have. Right now, some of our dashboards are updated till October 2020 and some of them are till June 2020. But for example, now we are working on getting a data refresh across all the dashboards. So that's where the SOPs and all the Python scripts that we created at that point are going to help us. So this was my last slide, but I think before before getting into the question and answers, I would just like to demonstrate a couple of dashboards that we created so that you guys can have a better view and then understand. This is the link to our Tableau public profile, and I'm going to also show you that. So just give me a minute. Chris, can you see my new screen?
Can see it.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. So this is our Tableau public profile. As you can see, we have worked on a lot of different projects, but the project that I'm going to talk about are related to APD, calls for service analysis. As you can see, we have different versions of the dashboard which are doing different things. Let's just take any one of them. I'm just taking calls for service, data analysis, mental health related call trends. So APD actually started flagging calls as related to mental health issue starting from January 2020. So one of the council member actually asked us to analyze how they are dealing with those specific calls. So if you see, this dashboard was created for January 2020 to October 2020. So if you see, out of all the calls that they got, the 911, how many out of the total calls they got on 911, almost 11% of the calls were related to mental health. This is the distribution by month. So you can see there was almost a constant number of calls coming in related to mental health problems. As you can see, this is like APD usually have a system where they define a call into a specific call problem category. So if you can see, check welfare was the one where maximum type of call came with a mental health flag. Disturbance calls were another, suspicious person, trespass, disturbance. So you can see all of these specific call categories had the most number of mental health flagged calls. What happened to those calls? If you see in this dashboard, majority of the in this graph, majority of the time there was a report written on these calls. So it ended up having a report in the name of the whoever person was there. If you see count of the calls received by hour of the day, it is almost constant, you can say. Like I know it is a little bit it is not exactly accurate because it is also covering non-mental health calls, but even if you see the numbers at the initial, at the and at the end, you'll see a pattern is okay. So there's no and then again on this dashboard, you are on this graph, you are seeing range of police officers assigned per each mental health call. So if you see, majority of the majority of the calls related to mental health, there was 2 police officers that were assigned on that particular call. Some of them had only 1, some of them had 3, and then it can go up till 12. So this is the distribution of how many police officers were actually going and answering those mental health flagged calls. And then again, what is the average response time, which basically means how many minutes they are taking starting from getting the call to reaching at the scene. So you can see, so, and then by priority, so APD defines priorities as these below categories. So P0 to P4. P0 is the most urgent case where the issue is in progress and the person is on the scene. One is it has just occurred and the person may be on the scene. 2 is again in progress or just occurred, but there is no or minimal immediate threat. 3 is life on property not at risk, so immediate response is not required. And then 4th is police not required, but they need documentation. So if you just see that distribution of response time by priority, you are seeing that APD officers take approximately 9 minutes to reach on the scene for any priority 0 call, which are the most urgent. For priority 1, they take approximately 11 minutes, 2 18 minutes, and then 3 almost 49 minutes. Similarly here, this is the graph of showing you distribution for the total time on scene, which basically means how many minutes they spend on the entire call, both for primary and backup officers. Again, it is distributed by priority. So if you see for priority 0 again, median is 129 minutes. So they usually spend 129 minutes for priority 0 calls, and then less for priority 1 and even lesser for priority 2. So this is like just a demonstration of how we have used the data that we got initially to perform this entire process, and showing these different insights to our audience, which at that point ranged from city staff to even the normal community members. We got a lot of emails from the actual community groups and citizens of the city asking about specific things that we later on helped and answered uh, almost all of the time. So this is just an example again. And then if you want to access, this is our Tableau public profile. You have a lot of such dashboards that you want, and I'm happy to discuss with you. Feel free to send me an email or reach out to us. We'll be happy to talk to you more about the process and things. And then this is what I think this is it on my presentation. Let me just go back to the PowerPoint, and then I think we can start with the question and answers.
Okay, thanks, Prakhar. That's awesome presentation, and that dashboard is so insightful. I mean, it's really a great public service too. I had no idea, I mean, mental health is important, but that's really insightful, that type of analysis. I had a first question. How long, for example, that dashboard, would you say like the life cycle was, from timeline wise, and on average, sort of what are you guys seeing on your projects?
So usually, and again, this is so majority of the time we spent on understanding the problem, because this particular project was the request of city council directly to our office. So our chief innovation officer was reached out by the city council to work on these things. So initially what we had was only the raw data of all the 911 calls. So majority of our time actually was spent on understanding and defining the problems, and then cleaning the data. So I would say, I think approximately it took around 2 months for everything. But specifically on dashboards, I think once we started figuring out the process, I think the dashboard, like actual dashboard design, was not a long process. But defining the problem and then actually cleaning the data was the bigger portion of the work that I had to do, given that we did not have like specific lines of direction that this is what we want. We were just given the data, and then we got the option of exploring what we need, and then what we can get insights out from, basically.
Yeah, no, I think everybody can relate to that. Definitely data prep tends to be the long part of it. And with Tableau, it's just so easy to use. Yes. I mean, prototyping and things like that is fast. I mean, sort of along those lines, my second question would be, how do you guys go about your design process? Do you do any wireframes or things like that, or mainly just iterate using Tableau? What's your process?
So for this particular project, we used Tableau since the beginning. Like, this was the tool we used, especially because of like easy accessibility. Because if we are using Tableau public, we do not have to worry a lot about like how do we reach out to a lot of, especially the city and the community members. So here we use, so we have a UI developer on our team as well. So she helped me in like designing and all of those processes as well. But at least for this project, we use Tableau from the scratch, basically. After getting the data, to just like do all the preparations, create even the derived variables that I talked about. I created them in like Tableau, defining all the times and everything.
Very cool. Very cool. Kobe, we'll sort of open the floor there. Do we have any questions that came in?
Yeah, one general housekeeping. People always want to know, will this presentation be shared?
Yes, definitely. We will send out a a email following with a recording of this event and also the presentation.
Good, and the slides, cool. Okay, so Derek has a question. Can you discuss the business problem that you were attempting to understand for the project, the business problem? It seems like it's more of a descriptive analytic problem, trying to understand better how to classify the types of calls received. So sort of what was the business problem?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so just as I talked about initially, we've got this data from the city council's directive as to just understand the overall process flow of APD, understanding how the entire flow works for them. So initially we did not have a defined business problem, but as we started working on it, we wanted to make sure that we are showing their entire process, every quantitative variable. We try to use it in any way to show them how they are performing. Like for example, during the COVID time, they received a lot of calls for different set of problems. So usually disturbance calls were less before pandemic, but as during the pandemic, those types of call increased. So these are like traffic stops basically. So traffic stops were number one reason for police, like the number one types of calls that police receives. But during COVID, it dropped significantly. And then again, so these were all the specific types of issues we started dealing on. And then once we started presenting it in our public safety committee, we got specific lines of inquiries from different community members and as well as city council members. And then we started working on those pretty specific call, like answer questions and then answered it. One example that I can give you is one of the city council member actually asked us to focus on disturbance calls to see what happens to them, how much time they take, what is the frequency of someone actually getting arrested or a report is written versus how many times it is just a false alarm, or like there's no report written. Sometimes police did not even reach, how much time they are spending. So like these were the set of inquiries that we created. There is a separate dashboard if you want to check it out on the Tableau public profile on that specific line of inquiry as well.
Yeah, okay. Thanks. Another question that came in was, how was the anonymization done? Like, I guess, make everything anonymous or whatever. I think that's the question.
Yeah, so this was like one of the trickiest thing that we had to do, because again, pin like the initial data we got, it had I don't think it had name, but it had everything else like demographics, and then it also had the location of where incident happened. Sometimes it had age and everything. So we just wanted to make sure that we are not present, especially because we were going to publish it on Tableau public. We just wanted to make sure that we are not using any column that we can use. We can basically track any particular person. So that's that. And then incident IDs. So those were the set of unique IDs that can actually point you to the specific person. So we had to like do the entire cleaning process where we had to give them separate codes and then match them with the incident ID, so that if in future you have to point out any specific if specific call, you can again reach out to the original data set. So those were the two processes that we had to do on the anonymizing part.
Okay. Then there's a question about how clean or dirty was the initial data. I can tell you what it normally is, but
so basically the data intake process, I would just say data intake process of APD was not designed to be able to use for any analysis. So they just have their specific manual processes that they do. So the data was in that fashion, but the APD was like helpful in making us understand their process. And then if we have any issues with the data, they helped us understand it. And after, I think this is another I can give you another part of like the real world effect that they did. So after this presentation that we did at the Public Safety Committee, APD actually took some steps starting November of 2020 to make changes and make their data more clean in terms of how they are ingesting the data on the system. So they made some changes in their data intake process. And this is one of our business requirements this time around, that once we refresh the entire data again for next iteration of these dashboard, this is something that we have to see as well, that how well their efforts actually worked in that direction.
Okay, so it was improved, tried to make improvements for the next round and keep doing it better. That's pretty difficult too. I think we
yes.
all see that. So, yeah.
So let's
All
see.
relate.
Maybe
Yeah. Yes.
maybe if you refresh our like if you see our dashboards, and like I would say next 2-3 months, maybe you'll see it a different picture. I'm hoping so, but yeah, let's see.
There's also a question about does anyone have a template for requirements gathering they'd be willing to share? Anybody have any links or any ideas about, just sort of a template for the roadmap, I guess, or that type of thing? I mean, the slide deck was pretty good. But...
Yeah, well, Prakhar, I don't know if you have anything, but yeah, certainly if anybody has some good links, feel free to put something in the chat right now, or you can email it to me directly, and I'd be happy to send it out to the group on our follow-up email.
I would say, especially like in the role I am currently in, it is very difficult to have like a ready to made template for understanding the requirement, because those requirements are a lot different. But I have used Tableau Blueprint a lot in my previous roles, and I think that's like a good document to use, especially if you are starting like the requirement gathering from the beginning, from scratch. I think Tableau Blueprint is a good document to have, because it gives you like all the ready-made templates based on like different, I think it also gives you different department level issues as well. Like you can have separate tabs for IT, you can have separate IT requirements, you can have separate ones for business requirements and things like that. So I think Tableau Blueprint, and I think it was like available directly on Tableau website earlier. I'm not sure about the latest one, but it used to be available for all of us before.
Yeah, that's a great point, Prakhar, and that's a good plug for Tableau Blueprint. For those of you that aren't familiar with it, he's actually referring not just the methodology, but there's a planner that comes along with it. So I can add that link too, so everybody can take a look at that. But if you have any other sort of templates, feel free to share them with me, and I'll send them out to the group.
Okay, I think we got time for one more.
Yeah.
It said, did you learn any factors in the data set that were correlated to the extending the length of the time officers were on the scene? So is there any correlation of like what kept them on the scene versus?
So I would say there were some correlations, but like initially we tried to show it to them, and then because it is initially in the initial like very early stages of the work. But I can give you an example of why, because the time on scene graph that you saw, it was basically a cumulative time spent. And as you saw, there were different number of police officers that can reach on that scene. And usually when there's a priority 0 call, which means it is most urgent, they get multiple police officers on the scene. So that's where you can have this difference of, because people are spending more time, and then priority 0 calls are usually like homicide can be is usually like not can be is a priority 0 call. So when you get those types of call, police actually spends a lot more time just at the scene to make sure that like they are protecting the people and things like that. So this was a direct correlation. We have a lot of different factors that we can work on. So like in one of the dashboards that we have, it is actually interactive. I can put the link here, or if you just want to go through the link for our Tableau public profile, you can see there's one which is called officer initiated versus calls, dispatch calls, which basically means sometimes police officer can initiate a call for service themselves, and then you get the traditional 911 calls. There's a comparison of both those two types of calls for different versions, and that particular dashboard is interactive, which basically means you can keep on clicking on like one specific call problem and see how that response time and time on scene actually changed based on those particular calls. So
Okay.
that's where I think this is something that you can especially look for in the data dashboards that we created.
Yeah. How did the city council and city staff and all consume the data? Did they use it on Tableau Public?
So yes, so we basically had the similar demonstration. Our city chief innovation officer actually presented two dashboards directly using Tableau public links on the during the call, and then we sent out a PDF where we had links to all the dashboards, and then we got sometimes some city council members had to get specific lines of inquiry, so sometimes we had to give them screenshots, but for usual things we used Tableau public all the way for just putting together all our insights and presenting it to all the audience.
Oh, very cool.
Because we even got some lines of inquiries from our mayor that he saw like some of the dashboards, and he had inquiries about why this happening, because like in one of the dashboard there was a comparison by the police districts, how many calls are coming in specific districts versus another. So that's where he had a line of inquiry that why do you think this is happening, can you investigate it more to see what is the difference in these two things. And so we used Tableau public for like all the communication that we did during that project.
Okay.
Very cool.
Thanks
All right.
so much. A great presentation. I mean, there are a lot of comments here. Everybody really enjoyed it. Everybody sympathizes, empathizes, everything with it. So, but you put it together, in my opinion, really well. So good job.
Yeah, thank you, Prakhar. Thank you for
Thank you.
sharing that with us. You guys are doing a lot of cool stuff over at the city of Austin. Everybody, if you get a chance, check out their public page. There's a lot of other really, really cool dashboards there. And I'll be sending out Prakhar's presentation as well with the follow-up email. So let's all give Prakhar a round of applause. Good job. Thanks, Prakhar.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, let me share my screen here. All right, guys. So our next session is going to be our networking breakout rooms. So for those of you that are new and maybe not participated in this before, we're going to be having two rooms. They're going to be a Zoom room down below. It's called Ask Anyone Anything, and Kobe's going to be leading that room. And I'll be leading another room around strategy and adoption. So pick one of the rooms that you're interested in. It's a good way just to meet other folks and networking. We'll do a little introduction about ourselves. In order to join, I'm going to open up the breakout rooms here in just a second. Select the breakout room icon, right? And you'll notice that there's a lot of people joining. The room you want to join, you got to act really fast and click on that room to join it. It might move around, but keep clicking. So with that, I'm going to open up here in just 1 second, and then everyone can go ahead and join. So let me do that right now.